Okay, so when you're going to send something that you want to print to the poster printer, the first thing you have to do is actually check and make sure that your file is going to be able to be printed on the poster printer without too many issues. Oftentimes what happens is people will bring in pictures that they want to print, but they aren't high quality enough. And so while they're on the computer, they might look fine. But as soon as you put them on the poster printer, because they become so large, it ends up being pixelated and it doesn't look very good. So what we're going to do is make sure that the photo that you've selected is actually a high enough quality. And if it's not, what you can kind of do to work around it. So first off, I'm going to go ahead and pull up a picture that I've selected off the internet. So what I'm going to use is this file right here, this tiger. And what we want to do to make sure that this file is actually going to be high quality enough that we can use it is I'm going to open it up in Photoshop and make sure that some of the stuff that we want to know is right. So I'm going to go ahead and go open up Photoshop. And once that loads in for you, what you want to do is come up here to File and click Open. And so what you need to do once you click Open is go and browse around until you find the file that you want to open. Go ahead and click on it and hit Open. Once you've done that, it should load in here as the picture, and you should be able to look at it and see, yeah, this looks pretty nice here in the program. And I mean, just looking at this, I think this could print pretty nicely. But there's a couple different ways that we can check that to make sure that it actually is going to print out correctly. So the first thing that we can do is if you come up here to the Image tab, click on it, and then come down here to where it says Image Size. So go ahead and click on that. Once you click on that, it's going to open up this window right here. And what this is it's kind of giving us a close-up view, because it's going to say, okay, well, if we look at this very closely, are you seeing like weird boxes? And what we can do is actually we can scroll around a little bit, looking around here. And on a really pixelated one, you would see these weird boxes all along the edges of things, and probably all here along his stripes and stuff. It would look really pixelated. But looking at this right now, it doesn't actually look that bad. And the reason for that is if we look over here at the resolution, this says 300. Now a 300 DPI, or pixels per inch image, is going to be a very good quality image. And that'll print fine on the poster printer that we have. So for the case that we're going to be using it for, this picture would work perfectly because it's a really nice high quality. Now oftentimes what happens is when you load a photo in, if it's just some sort of clip art or something you've pulled off of the internet, this is going to say 72. Now 72 is a pretty low resolution for an image, but it's not terrible. So depending on how large you're going to print your poster and how much it really matters to you whether or not it comes out looking pristine or anything, this being 72 could be bad, but it could also be okay. So if you're not too concerned about it being really pixelated or anything, this being 72 is fine. But if you really want a nice, crisp, clean image, this saying 72 might be an issue for you, and you might need to either figure out how to get a higher quality photo or do something else with it. Now you can actually come in here and just edit this number to be whatever you want, but that doesn't actually change the quality of your photo. You can change it to a lower resolution, so if I wanted, I could actually bump this down to 72, and it would change the resolution. And so now the image that's showing here is zoomed out further because it's saying that there's only so many pixels per inch and there's actually less. And so, but since I knew this was originally 300, I can change this back to 300 and it'll be fine. And so looking at this, I can say, okay, this is 300, this should be good to print. So it's more of up to your discretion whether or not looking at this image here if you think it's going to print correctly or not. And so the other thing that we want to do here while we're in image size is we want to set the actual width and height as what we want to print it as. So whatever numbers you enter here is the actual real size it's going to print out on the printer. And so I'm going to look at this and say, okay, I kind of like the tiger how he is, and I think I want him to be the entire width of the poster printer. And the poster printer we have can print at a max width of 42 inches wide. And so I'm looking at this and going, okay, I want it to be as large as I possibly can make it. And so I'm going to change the width to 42 inches. And so now you can see it zoomed in even more. And now we're starting to see a little bit of pixelation, but really nothing terrible. And so looking at this, I still think, yeah, that should print out fine, because this is a really close-up view. I mean, it's taken me forever to scroll up just to the top of the back of the tiger. And so looking at this, I think this is okay to print. And so if I click OK, it's going to load for a sec because it's changing the size. And so it's loading how large it's going to be. Yeah, there we are. And so now we're zoomed way in. Oops. And so now that we're zoomed way in, we can... Okay, so what I want to do now is I'm kind of zoomed in far on the picture, and it's kind of hard to see things that I want to see, stuff like that. So if I go to my keyboard, hold down Control, and hit minus, it's going to zoom out a little bit for me, and I think I'm going to hit it one more time. There we are. Okay, so now I can actually see the entire photo. I'm actually going to do it one more time. There we go. And so now it's back to basically the same size it was before. And so now I'm looking at this, and I'm saying, well, I like this photo, but there's a lot of extra space over here that I don't really want. I want the tiger as big as possible, and this is just extra space that I don't need. And so if you find you have some extra space that you want to cut out, there's actually a tool in Photoshop that can get rid of that for you. So if you come over here and click on Crop, which is this tool right here, it's going to put a white box around your entire thing. And there's a couple different ways you can do this. I could come down and I could draw a box around what I wanted to keep. And so once I draw that box, if I let go, it's going to shade everything darker where it's not going to be, and it's going to keep everything in light that I'm going to keep. And the other way that we can do this is while we have the crop tool selected, you're going to see there's this dashed line outline around the outside of your image with these boxes at the middle of it. Now you can see when I scroll over top of it, there's a left and right arrow that appears. So if I click and drag this, I can actually just click and drag the edges to where I want it to be. So I could drag this there, I could drag this down a little bit, maybe not quite so close, drag this over a little bit to get closer to his tail, and there we go. So now I've made the picture a little bit smaller, but what this is it's going to actually allow me to make the tiger a little bit bigger, because there's less margin space that it has to print around it. So once I have it at the size I want, I'm going to hit Enter on the keyboard, and that's going to cut it down to the size I want. Now I'm going to go back to Image size, and now you see the number has changed. Now the reason the number has changed is because it didn't scale it. It kept it at the same size it was before, and I trimmed off probably about 8 inches worth from the sides. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to change this back to 42, hit OK, and it's going to load again like it did last time, and it'll probably make the image a little bit bigger. So we just have to sit here and wait just a little bit so that it can actually load the size of the image, and it should pop up real big. There we go. And so now you can see it's a little bit bigger because this is actually 42 inches wide now. And if I were to print this right now, then this would be the entire width, 42 inches wide. And I can actually check in here. Oop, that was the wrong button. Let's click on image size. If I come in here, it's going to be 25 inches tall, so just over 2 feet. So I'm looking at this and saying, well, actually, if I were to look at this photo, you can see that it's shorter from top to bottom than it is left to right. Well, you could think, oh, well, actually, if I rotated this, wouldn't it mean I could print the poster even bigger? Because it's on a roll, so it can print as long as it needs to, but it can only be 42 inches wide. So yeah, if you're looking to print as large as you possibly can, if it's smaller top to bottom, what you can do is you can actually rotate your image so that it's going to be longer and wider. So we're going to come up here, and we're going to go, I believe, to Image. Yeah, there it is. And so just under Image Size, there's a thing that says Image Rotation. And so if we come down here, it's going to say 90 degrees clockwise or 90 degrees counterclockwise. It doesn't really matter which way you do it. So I'm just going to click on clockwise, and that's going to spin it. And so now I can kind of scroll up and down, look at it, and if I go back into Images, you're going to see the numbers have flipped. Now the height is 42 and the width is only 25. Well, we know that in our poster printer the width can be up to 42 inches wide. And so if I highlight this and change this to 42, now we see that it's going to be even bigger now, because it's going to have a length of 67 inches, which is over 5 feet, and that's much bigger than what I had before. So what this means is I've basically figured out how to make my poster even bigger, and so this is probably about the largest that this photo will be able to be made. And so I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And so one more time, we're going to have to wait for this to load so that it actually can resize it, and when we send it to the printer, it's going to be the correct size that we want it to be. So this bar is just going to load for a little bit longer, and once it's done, it should pop up quite a bit bigger than it is right now. And if we need to look at it anymore, again, we're going to be able to come down here and hit Control minus, and I'm going to scroll down a little bit, and yeah, that looks pretty good. And so I can look at this and say, yeah, Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. Well, if there's anything else you want to add, you can look up a Photoshop tutorial to kind of add that stuff. But those are some of the basic tools that you're going to need in order to edit this photo how we want it. Now, there is one other thing that you're going to want to change before you set it to the printer. And where that is you come up to Image, hit Mode, and actually you just hold over top of it. You don't have to actually click it. And you're going to see it's selected on RGB color. That's because on a computer screen, RGB color shows up a lot better. But in real life, what you're going to want is CMYK color. And the reason for this is if you print an RGB color, when you print it out, it's not going to quite look the same as it does on the computer screen. The colors are just going to be a little bit off. And if you're not comparing them side by side, you're not going to really notice. But if it does end up being that you really want those colors to be exactly the color that it is, you're going to want to switch it to CMYK color. Now, I can't promise it's going to be the exact color you need exactly, but it's going to get a lot closer than RGB color would. So I'm going to click on CMYK color, and it should pop up, yep, here with the box saying that if you change it, it's, you know, oh no, it might not be what you want. But this is. I assure you this is going to be what you want it to look like. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. So once I've clicked OK, it's going to change the color scheme a little bit. Now looking at this, you might not see any difference, but if we were to zoom in really close and compare the pixel colors side by side, they would be a little bit different. But for the most part, it's not too much different. And this is just, again, going to make sure that it looks correct once we come in and actually do it on the poster printer. So now that I have this, and I'm just going to go through and make sure everything looks right. We have a good resolution. The width is 42 inches wide, which is what I want because I want this nice giant large poster of a tiger. And so that looks good. And so I'm going to click OK there. And I went and rotated the image. I can come down here and check, and yes, CMYK color is selected. And that looks like it should be good. So what I'm going to do now is going to go ahead and I'm going to save this as the file. And if I come down here, there's going to be a couple options. I could either just click save, and what that's going to do is it's going to overwrite the original photo I had. Now maybe you just want to make this photo ready to poster print, and you don't want to overwrite the original photo. You want to leave it the way it is. If that's the case, then just choose save as. So if I were to select save right now, which I can, it's going to pop up with this window asking what quality we want it to save as. I always do maximum quality so that it comes out exactly how we want it on the printer. And if I were to do this, it would overwrite the original file. And let's say I didn't want to do that, so I'm just going to click cancel. Let's say I wanted to save it as a different type of file so that I could keep the original as it was. So I'm going to click on file and come down here and click save as. Now I'm going to see here it shows all the ones that are saved as a JPEG, which is the same file type. And if I were to click save right now, it would pop up with a warning saying that there's already a file that exists with this name. And it's like, do you want to just replace it? So if I clicked yes, it would get rid of my original file and it would replace it with this one. Well, again, I don't want to do that, so I'm going to click no. And what I can do here is I can rename the file. So it has the exact same name, but I could say, I can maybe add something to it, say, well, it's going to be ready, but let's call it this, but poster print. And now that I've added that, the names are different, and it'll be allowed to save it as a separate file. So if I click save now, it's going to pop up with this window again. And what it's going to say is, yeah, what kind of quality do you want to save it as? Because you can do a really low quality, or you can do a high quality. And again, for the poster printer, we need as high quality as possible because of how large we're blowing up this image. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK because it's selected at the maximum possible quality. So I'm going to leave it there and click OK. And so down here in the bottom, you see it's saving and it's got a percentage. So don't close out of Photoshop until this is done. So this is still saving. It's at 99%. Not quite done yet. We got to wait for it. So just give it a sec, and there it goes. Okay. So now that it is done saving, we can come up here and we can actually just go ahead and close out Photoshop because we've saved this as we want it. Now, maybe you think you might do some other poster prints, or you might want to come back and change this, and that's fine. You could just leave Photoshop open and come back to it. So I'm actually just going to downsize this. And so now that I downsize it, we can see there are two different types of files here. The one that we originally used and the one that we are going to be poster printing. And you can see here the file name is a little bit different. It's got poster print at the end of it, whereas this one doesn't. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and open up the program that controls the poster printer. And that program is called HP Utility. You can find it on the desktop, or you can also find it if you just search in Windows. So I'm going to go ahead and open up here, and you can see here in the top left it says HP Utility. It's got this little icon on the top of it. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and select the printer that we're going to be using. Now, here at the college, we just have the one poster printer. It's called the HP DesignJet Z6200. And so what I'm going to do is click on that, and it's going to open up this window. And what this is just kind of, it gives all the status of all the stuff, all the information, but you guys just want to print it. So all we're going to do is click on Job Center. And once we click on Job Center, it's going to load all the past jobs that have been submitted. And also if there's any stored jobs, anything else that you want to know, this is going to have all the information here. Now we just typically use this here in the lab so that we have records of all the things that people have printed, and we also have a record of who all printed it. That way we can make sure that everyone who came in and printed stuff actually paid for it. And so what we're going to do is we're going to come up here and click on Submit Job. So if I click on Submit Job, it's going to open up a window in Internet Explorer. And so what I'm going to do is open this up, and you're going to see here there's an option to browse for your file. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Browse. So what this does is this opens up a window again like we had last time. And what we're going to do is we're going to look around and grab our file. Now I remember that it was in Downloads where the original one was, and since they're side by side, my new one's in here too. So I'm going to go ahead and click on it and hit Open. Now if I open this up, you can see it's got the file path name right here. And so what we can do is come down here, and you can see there's an option to print right here, but we're not going to quite do that yet, because you can see there's two things in red that say mandatory fields, and if you don't fill these in, it's not going to let you print. And so what we're going to do is we're going to fill these in, because it says unknown right now, and so we need to fill that in with a name. So what we can do is if I click on username, it's going to let me type in something. And in this instance, whatever you're printing it, what you can do is you can just sit down and enter your name, maybe enter the name of the company that you're printing it for, or maybe you have a friend that you're just printing it for and you want to put down their name. It doesn't really matter, just so we can keep a record of who it was that printed it. Typically, just enter your name so that we know who it is that actually printed it, and that way we know that we can ask you any questions in case something were to go wrong with the print or we had an issue with it getting paid. So just go ahead and fill in a name here. I'm just going to enter Nathan so that we know that it was me who printed this picture. And now you would just have to enter that exact same thing again down here in Account ID. So I'm just going to enter Nathan. And so now that I've entered those two in there, it should be all ready to print. And one other thing that you should keep in mind is that on top of the poster printer, there is a file that keeps track of all the things that people have printed. It's basically exactly what I showed you earlier, where it keeps track of all the things. But it's just a written record, so that we have that in case of an accident with the files here on the computer. And so go ahead and write down all the information that you're printing in here. It'll ask you to write down your name. It'll ask when you printed it. It'll ask you to have it initialed by the 3D Lab staff that approved you to print it. And it'll ask you to write down the price and whether or not you paid. And so the way you calculate the price is it's $3 per foot for the normal heavyweight paper. So if in this case, and I'm actually going to open Photoshop back up again just so we can look at that. So again, when I was looking at this, it said that the height was 67 inches, which is about 5.5 feet. So just a little bit over. Now, if you wanted to get really exact, you could go in and you could calculate the exact price this is going to be, which is probably going to be like $5.57 or something funny like that. I'm not going to actually go calculate it out because we're not that, we don't care that much here. So, I mean, me working here at the time, if I looked at this, I would say, okay, 60 feet is going to be 60 inches is going to be 5 feet. And for the people who are printing with that, that's going to be 5 feet times 3 is $15. And depending on what they were doing, I might also say, well, it's actually more 5.5 feet because you have about 66 inches. And so then I would say, well, 5.5 feet, that's going to be more like $16.50. And we're pretty lenient here. If you have like a 20, I'm not going to try and get you exact change. I'll just, if you have a 20 and I had a 5 at the time, I would just be like, okay, $15. That's close enough. We'll figure it out. Just ask the 3D Lab staff person on duty at the time. But But if you want to get real exact, go ahead and calculate out the price or something. Go crazy with it. And so what we're going to do is see what that is and then go ahead and find your price. And that should be good. So I'm going to click OK and go ahead and downsize this out. But that's pretty much all you need to do. Once you hit print, the printer will automatically start printing your job. It'll start warming up, getting ready to print, and all that. And you're going to need to open up the cloth catcher underneath the printer. And I'll show you how to do that. But yeah, so I'm not going to actually click print because I don't want to print this tiger. But in the case that you had your print ready to go, you would just click print right here, and it would go to the printer. So yeah, that should be pretty much it. And now we'll head over to the printer, and I'll show you how to do everything else that you might need to. Open up the cloth tray, maybe replace the paper if you needed to do that. But yeah, so I'll see you back over there. And that's about all there is about printing with the poster printer. So I hope that this guide helped you figure out a couple ways of what you need to do to print with the poster printer and get it come out looking how you need it to. Or maybe even just troubleshoot a couple things that you were having issues remembering. So I hope that all your posters come out the way you want them to, and thanks for watching.